Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the latest in our conversation series, The Portal, which asks the question, if we are facing a new normal, what should that normal be? And how can we build a world which is fairer, more just, and sustainable post-pandemic? My name is Dr. Patrick Patak, and I'm the director of the Social Impact Lab, the University of Southampton's community for students to gain knowledge, build skills, and learn through experience to lead sustainable social change. For the latest in our series, we're delighted to welcome a globally renowned social entrepreneur and longtime friend of the lab, ElsaMarie D'Silva. Elsa is currently the founder and CEO of Red Dot Foundation's SafeCity, which is a platform that crowdsources personal experience of sexual violence and abuse in public spaces. Since SafeCity started in December 2012, it's become the largest crowd map on the issue in India, Kenya, Cameroon, and Nepal. She's a fellow with Rotary Peace, Aspen New Voices, and Vital Voices. She's listed as one of BBC Hindi's 100 Women and has won Female Entrepreneur of the Year Award and the Digital Woman Award in Social Impact by She the People, among many others. She's written articles that have appeared in CNN, Huffington Post, WOP, among others. She has spoken about her work at the Aspen Ideas Festival and TEDx Mid-Atlantic. Prior to SafeCity, she was in the aviation industry for 20 years, where she worked with Jet Airways and Kingfisher Airlines. Her last portfolio was Vice President Network Planning and Charters, where she oversaw the planning and implementation of over 500 flights daily. Elsa, welcome to the portal.
Thank you, Patik. Good evening from Mumbai. How are you doing?
Very well indeed. Thank you for joining us. We just had a conversation. This is obviously quite late for you, but not late for you because you tend to work probably anyway. And I know you work all hours. So thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. So it's quite an interesting, you're one of the people who, when I think about lockdown, I always think about Elsa because I know you fly a lot and you travel all the time. How has lockdown been for you?
Actually, it's been, I don't want to use the word great, but it's been a time for me to ground myself and, reflect like a lot of people have been doing, but also connect with people around me. So for example, I don't think I've spent as long a time in Mumbai, which I call home. People have been asking me, so where are you right now? And when I say home, they're saying, where's that? So Mumbai, which is my home, for the longest time, in the last 3 or 4 years, I've been constantly on the road and not been here for, more than 2 weeks. So to be here for like 3 to 4 months and just get back into a routine, spend that time with my mother, but also, connect with my teammates, friends. I've called up a lot of people, hosted them on many live casts like this. So in a way, it's like deep diving and checking out how they've been. And more importantly, being able to connect with my nieces. 2 of them are in Singapore and 1 is in Melbourne. So when I'm traveling, it's very hard for them to estimate where, what's the time zone I'm in. They're very young. They're all below the age of 8. So now, because they are in lockdown or they were in lockdown till a few weeks ago, and I'm in lockdown, they can just pick up the phone or, FaceTime me and not have to think about, okay, she's not going to answer. So I've had the most beautiful experiences where I get a message saying, Auntie Elsa, just log in now, otherwise you're going to miss the dance. Or can you please call us? We have something to show you. So I feel in a way, the lockdown has allowed me to connect very closely to the people I care about.
That's great. Do you miss the travel?
To be honest, no, because I've had a lot of travel. It's not that I don't like traveling. I don't get hassled with it either. But I think somewhere in my subconscious, I know the importance of not traveling. And therefore, there is no urge to travel. In fact, even if it were to open up, I won't travel. I won't travel till early next year because I just don't want to put myself at risk. And I don't think anything is so important right now that one needs to travel. So I'm mentally prepared to be in India, to stay at home, even not get out of my city, because I really don't think it's necessary. Right now, we can't put so much of burden on the healthcare system. Ours is groaning and
Yeah.
bursting at the seams. And, I have an elderly person in my home. I don't want to put her at risk at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think, because people have been talking about how the new normal will mean less travel, less conferences, less 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 need to travel. Do you think that the virtual technologies we have, are they replicating the relations we used to have in as close a way as we need, or do you think there's still a long way to go before we can actually say you don't need to travel because you can have the same kind of human experience through Zoom or through other platforms?
Atik, that's a very interesting question, and a lot of people are wondering about it. To be honest, you cannot replace the human connection. There is a place and time for that, and there is importance in meeting people. I, for one, really value physical interactions because I like, getting the vibe of a person. So for me, it's very important that I meet someone. But I do believe technology will replace a lot of the conferences. There's no need to travel when you could bring many more people. In fact, it actually allows you to bring diverse people onto the Zoom platform or whatever platform you're using for a discussion, which if that person had to travel all the way from, say, India to the US for just one meeting, just doesn't make sense. It's a huge amount of money. It's a lot of time wasted. And maybe you might not get a visa in time.
Yeah.
So there are practical considerations that one needs to keep in mind. Also, if you have little children, you might not be able to leave them, or what, for whatever reason, you could have somebody sick at home. But with technology like this, you can make that time in your busy day and still be part of something that is larger than what you could have been part of. So there is a space for technology, but I don't know whether it can fully replace physical interactions.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess it does level the connectivity that it used to be just if you could travel, then you could be part of these things. But now, as you say, if you have a decent internet connection, so if you're not in the UK, that applies to you. If you're in the UK, doesn't matter how much money you have, it's probably going to drop after about 5 minutes. But otherwise, if that's all you need, then that is a great leveler, isn't it? And that means we can, as you say, get more diverse voices, people who are underprivileged into the conversation, which obviously we need more of. You do a lot. I mean, when I look at your Facebook page, I get dizzy and I want to cry. But you're busy because you seem to be doing things hour by hour by hour throughout the day. We talk about Zoom fatigue a lot. Everyone seems to have suffered from Zoom fatigue. How have you survived it? And has there been one kind of habit or strategy that you've used that has helped you to cope with the volume of online conversations you've had to have during lockdown?
There's always two sides to the story. So in today's world, you have to be on your laptop to connect. I mean, if it weren't COVID, you would have been dizzy just looking at my travel schedule, wouldn't you? Right? I've had people tell me that. I don't know how you do it. It's so busy. So I don't see any difference. It's just that I've adapted to technology and I've adapted to the online version. I don't get hassled with these kind of things. For me, it's part of my life. I really have to figure it out and be good at it. So not just about how do getting on and speaking with you, but really understanding how this platform can make the interaction that I have with you or with the people that I'm conversing with. We do a lot of webinars and a lot of events for young people. How can we make it interesting for them? So understanding the features of the platform, live streaming it so that more people can access it. For me, it's all about how many people can receive the message that I want to give out. And for me, the cause is more important. And if I have to be on these webinars and meetings, that's just part of my job. But the other side is you also have to take care of yourself. So the first half of my day, literally in the morning, is about, my exercise, which I do again over Zoom. But, I'm the participant over there, and I have fitness coaches because in India we have a very strict lockdown, and in Bombay it's extended till the 31st of July, so we are not allowed to exercise outside. So I've been exercising at home, and then it's about just relaxing, talking to my nieces, listening to the news, etc. But my real work starts maybe a little later, and then from 3 o'clock onwards it's really intense. So yeah, so it's up to each one. How do you cope and how do you manage your day and your time? And if it's too much for you, then you should take breaks. Like, for example, we've told our team members every 90 minutes, take a 15-minute break, go look out of the window, look at something green. You know how small our apartments are, so don't look at any device. But I cannot force anyone. You have to self-regulate. So it's really up to you. Supreet, who's my partner at Red Dot, on Sundays, she just doesn't look at her phone at all. So each one to their own, but you have to incorporate some of those self-care routines in your day.
Absolutely. That sounds like a really good plan. If we can just change gears and talk about gender equality, one of the things we talked about before the call was how gender inequality has been exacerbated in the UK during lockdown, especially in working households where both partners are working. Men tend to be doing more of their full-time work. Women tend to do childcare and work. Do you have any sense of the data that's emerging from India and whether that pattern is being replicated over there?
So several things. One is during the lockdown, the number of cases of reported domestic violence has spiked. Now, domestic violence, as you are aware, has been an age-old issue. It has always been called a pandemic. And now that we are in the midst of this pandemic, COVID-19, it's being called the shadow pandemic. And it's so unfortunate that people are now paying attention to it. I mean, it's fortunate in a way, but unfortunate that it took a pandemic like this to shine a light on this issue. Everywhere in the world, they've been reporting statistics like as much as 25 to 35% increase in number of calls. Even in India, much as it is underreported, the National Commission of Women said that they've had a 20% increase right from the first week onwards. They instituted a WhatsApp number because WhatsApp is very widely used in India, and they were flooded with messages for help. One thing that we have to remember is that during this lockdown and a strict lockdown that was enforced in India, you are trapped in a small space with your perpetrator and your abuser. And you might not have access to technology to ask for help because, the person could be right next to you when you need to call for help. So we have to think of different ways how that person can seek help. So whether WhatsApp or maybe, a different way to call rather than making it obvious, but also the role of neighbors and friends and family members at large who can intervene, who can recognize the signs of this kind of violence. And we've tried to do a lot of trainings and seminars on that. We also have a Safe Circle that we started for those who are going through such a crisis, because remember, a lot of it is with an intimate partner, and people may not have financial independence to walk out of the relationship. Right now, you cannot even walk out of your home and go to a shelter home because no shelter home is accepting new intakes due to COVID-19, and there are very few resources that can come to your aid. And there's low trust levels with the police, who are the only ones who have mobility across the city. So really it's about, finding that community of support and solidarity. So every Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time, we have a listening circle just to listen and just, form a community of support. But having said that, the larger problem is the gender inequality. And it's not just during COVID-19, it's come to light because of COVID-19, where you're stuck for an extended period of time in your home and your children cannot go to school. So you're stuck at home with your children too. So for a woman, it's literally work from home if she's a working, she has a formal job, work at home and work for home. So it's like a triple whammy in a way. And men don't really do their fair share. So even in India, we've noted, I've had friends of mine and they could be C-suite, and their husband is also from the C-suite level, but he will find a quiet corner or a room and sit there and do his work, and he'll just pretend like nothing else, is happening, and the woman has to do everything herself. So this is a larger problem, and that's why if you look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 of them which every single person on earth has to achieve by 2030 if we want to live the life that we are familiar with. And SDG 5, gender equality, is one. Imagine you have one only for gender equality. And what does that tell you? That in every country in the world, there is a problem. And we might choose to think we are liberal and progressive, etc., but really we have to examine our own lives and see what is it that we are failing at, and can we correct it? So, and this is a moment in time where we are reckoning so many different aspects and issues, from Black Lives Matter to different forms of inequality and discrimination. And therefore, we also have to look within and see whether we can correct the imbalance within our homes.
I mean, what you're saying actually is really interesting because it links to the idea of reimagining public spaces. And one of the things about SafeCity as a platform is that it maps public spaces and sexual violence in those spaces. And this goes not just to the lockdown period, but beyond it. There will be a significant period of time, it may extend for years, whereby actually our interaction with public spaces is limited, and a lot more does happen privately as more people, as employers start to say, well, you know what, we don't need you to work in an office, you can work from home. So everything that's happened now might continue to happen for a couple of years. Does that mean, and you've talked about a couple of things you're doing to retool your efforts to adapt to what's happening now. But in terms of reimagining public space, what kind of things are you looking at? I mean, if you can kind of project the new normal for public spaces, what do you think it's going to look like, both at the Indian level, but globally too?
So Pathik, I will come to public spaces in a minute, but you touched on a very important point, which is the blurring of lines between your home and your workplace. And now your workplace is in your home. Okay, so yesterday I happened to do a webinar for a Chamber of Law and Commerce in Delhi. And it was on an Indian legislation called Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace. And they asked me to think about and explain what could be the changes that is anticipated in this piece of legislation in a virtual workspace. And I said the intention of that law was to provide women the dignity and the right to work in a safe environment. Now, if your home is your workplace and it is not safe because of, say, an abusive relationship within your home, how would an employer, what is the employer's duty and responsibility? Do you just say, oh, sorry, it's your home, and therefore it doesn't fall in our jurisdiction?
Right.
Or is it up to them to make sure that you have a safe workspace? I mean, we are venturing into really a new normal. It's not a normal, actually, a new situation where we don't know what are the implications of these blurred lines, and where does one's responsibility end as an employer, and where something else takes over because it's your private space. So there's no private and public in this kind of scenario. So it's a very interesting area. And that was just yesterday when I raised that question, and nobody really had an answer. And honestly, employers will turn around and say, oh my God, we've been hit really hard with COVID-19, and now you're putting this added complexity to it. But what I'm saying is, it's forcing us to have these conversations about domestic violence and all forms of violence against women and girls, because for so long, and for far too long, and we are in 2020, unfortunately, it's a horrible year, but it's taken us this long to really have these open dialogues and conversations about something that is impacting many households and many women. And whether we want to admit it or not, we are affected by it. And we carry that trauma with us. Now, coming back to public spaces, yes, at this point in time, we are not out in public spaces. But if we were to reimagine, then we have to look at all spaces, whether it's virtual spaces, whether it is your private, public, like the home, which is the workplace, and of course the public space, and see if women are to have the dignity and the right to work, then what is our responsibility as the government or an employer to provide her that safe environment? Earlier, we were looking at transport, we were looking at streets, we were looking at, all these, the spaces that she would occupy to live her life, whether it is on her way to work or school or college or whatever, or her right to be in that space. But now there is no distinction. So even virtual spaces, like the ability to use technology, but if there's only one device in that home, who gets the right to use it? So we'll have to rethink some of these things, and maybe some of the budgets might have to be diverted to provide the infrastructure so that everybody has equal access to these opportunities. We started this call about talking about the internet connectivity and the strength of that connection, and maybe that might have to be priority for all governments. Estonia has already said it's the right of every citizen to have access to the internet, because a lot of their services are already digital. But if our life has to be lived through these channels, then they have to provide that infrastructure, right? So when I rethink public spaces, I'm thinking, actually, there might not be public spaces in the way that we have imagined it. Rather, we'll have to expand our understanding of what constitutes a public space. And the very fact that you and I are talking over this and live streaming on Facebook, that's a public space. So if I'm getting trolled or if I'm getting Zoom bombed, that's a violation of my right to be in that space. I should not have to worry about it. So what is the onus and what is the responsibility of the provider? And what is the responsibility of a conference organizer? We just hosted a Rotary Peace Conference on Saturday, and it was across different zones. And you know how much we deliberated on the Zoom bombers and how are we going to take precautions? But I can tell you, I've been a panelist with other organizers, and they don't even take basic precautions sometimes. So, we all have to upgrade our skills, understand the technology that we are working with, because this is a space, it's like a contract that you and I have, and I should be afforded some kind of security in that way, where I won't be insulted, I won't be trolled, and I won't be Zoom bombed. Of course, some things do happen, but again, if you've done your bit, you minimize the risk of it, right? So
Yeah.
it's really about rethinking some of these things. And then, of course, physical distancing in India, a lot of the physical distancing, I don't know how how relevant or possible it is given how dense our cities are. But maybe people might learn new behaviors, and hopefully that in itself might reduce some of the, you know, um, the verbal and the non-verbal forms of harassment. But at the same time, you might see an increase in another form of harassment. Maybe
Yeah.
it could be in the digital form, the digital format. One of the things we've done with a law firm is make domestic violence services essential, and we've filed a PIL to that effect, a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court.
So many things that we could draw out of that, but I did
Yeah.
one thing that you talked about that I was that preempted a question I was going to ask, which was about digital space, and it was about this notion of trolling, Zoom bombing, all of the things that actually happen in, as you say, this is now our workspace. Our workspace is all of the social media platforms, all of the all the communication platforms. They are all actually now our workplaces and workspaces. It does feel as though, and everyone has the right to feel safe in those spaces. Do you see the tension, or do you think there is a tension between providers need to observe freedom of expression and safety for users? And I guess this especially relates to social media platforms. But do you think we're getting that? Do you think we're getting that balance right, or do you think there is a long way to go?
Oh, yes, we have a lot of work to be done. And, it's great that Twitter has already started to put out those notifications when people don't put out factual statements,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if they are the president of a country.
Mm.
So the more we can find ways to alert people that this is fake news, you need to check this out, you know, I think it's better.
Yeah.
First of all, how many people are on social media? So we are talking of a small, tiny percentage of the larger universe.
Mm.
We need to, first of all, build the confidence of people everywhere to feel comfortable using technology. I'll give you an example. So, Red Dot works across several cities in India, including rural areas. And we've had to move all our work online because schools, colleges, communities, and corporates are all shut, right? Those are the spaces we work with. Now, in some of our rural communities, we invited them to come onto Zoom for some of our sessions. And it would have been done in a regional language, not in English, and tailored to their needs. But they said, we don't want to be on Zoom because we heard it's. So they had already heard about the Zoom bombing. And, remember about 2 or 3 months ago, there were some Zoom bombings in the Singapore classrooms, and the country decided no Zoom or something like that. So they'd already heard about it and they refused to get onto Zoom. So we use Google Hangouts, we've used WhatsApp, we've used conference calls. We've learned to adapt. Now, initially they were reluctant, but a few of them came on, tried it, they told the others, and now the cohort from say 10 people who were willing to be on the call has grown to 40 people. So you have to try, but in the bargain, you have to also build the confidence of the people. Try out different ways. Now, Zoom may work with you and me, but Zoom may not work with somebody who's not comfortable or who may not own a device or doesn't have access to the internet. So you have to figure out. So, like on WhatsApp, they do bite sized information. like small nuggets so that they can send it across, get them to think about it, revert with an answer. So we've tried all of that. And slowly we are building the confidence. But now think about those people. They are not on social media.
Right.
And a lot of educated, literate people are not on social media. If you did a poll amongst your own friends, at the most, they might be on LinkedIn or Facebook. They are scared of Twitter. They may not understand Instagram. Some people are on Instagram, but not on Facebook, not on Twitter. So it really depends. Which one are you comfortable with? And each social media platform serves a different purpose and is different in the interface. So one needs to understand how these different platforms work, and also how can you use it for, say, educating, advocating, or just having fun. You could be there purely for leisure purposes. I'm not there for leisure. I'm there purely business. It's like I use it only for work, very rarely for my own personal use in a way. So, but each one has to decide. But really, we are talking about people not being comfortable and not actually using it to its full potential. I feel there is power in these platforms because A, they are free. Two, you can reach out to many more people who you wouldn't otherwise have reached out to. And C, you could also be learning in the process because there's so much of information out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about hope, I guess. And during lockdown, we've seen and we've talked a lot about the ways in which gender inequality has worsened in some cases. Has anything happened that's given you hope for gender equality? Are you seeing, are there kind of green shoots of equality either in policies, campaigns, things that you're part of, or things that you've seen globally?
Okay, so I think the biggest hope is the countries that have done well.
Yeah.
The most common thing is that they're all led by women, and the world is beginning to notice. So I would hope that people who doubt the leadership of women or feminist leadership might want to change their minds and give it a try. Two, there really is space. It's teaching us there's space for empathetic leadership. And in times of crisis, maybe women do show a lot more empathy than men do. I don't know. But this is what's coming out. It's not true that every woman is a great leader and every male is not is a bad leader. It's about how you look at a problem and what's your thinking. And therefore there is a case to be made for diversity on the teams, so that you have more women on your team, you have more representation in all forms. So we are now talking, there's a lot of discussion on race happening. And you have to, because if it's not your lived experience, how are you going to design policies that will impact those lives? Right. We need very diverse teams. We need empathy. We need bold leadership, bold, not rash, but bold to think out of the box on solutions and communication. I just wrote an article and I said that one of the main things is trust between citizens and government. And that can't be built in a pandemic. It has to be built before a crisis, so that when you are in a crisis, the communication is trustworthy. And I had a private meeting with the mayor of one of the New Zealand cities, and just trying to understand how did they handle the COVID-19. And what she said was about this trust relationship that they have with their citizens, which was before COVID. So in times of COVID, having clear and concise and simple to understand communication made all the difference, because the people trusted their leadership. But when you don't receive clear communication, take for example, here, they issue a notice. After a few hours or maybe a day or so, they'll change it. And then again, they'll reverse it. And then they'll change it. And it leaves people confused.
Yeah.
And if your leader doesn't explain what's in store for you, you won't be able to plan accordingly. So I, as a leader, also have a responsibility to my team. In February, I traveled to 3 different countries. I went to Germany. At that time, it was the beginning of Feb. COVID wasn't on the radar. The second week of February, I went for a UN Habitat conference in Abu Dhabi. Half the delegation didn't show up because they were Chinese. So I was beginning to pick up signals. In the last week of February, I went to INSEAD in France, and there they weren't accepting people who had visited China or were from China. And there were precautions everywhere. There were sanitizers everywhere. So when I got back in the first week of March, I knew this is not good. So I started to prepare my team. In fact, I told them at that time in March, first of all, I halted all public events for our organization from 8th of March, much before any government guideline in my country. I told them, stay at home, we can't take this risk. I said, prepare yourself. We are going to go into lockdown mode until September, nothing is going to happen. And it's pretty much, coming true. So if you prepare your team to mentally accept this reality, and accordingly, you plan for your organization and you build your team resiliency, which we did. The first month, we only focused on our team and their mental health and their ability to adapt. And then we extended it to our interns, volunteers, and then to the public. So when you do things like that, you're in a good place. But if your leader doesn't do it, I'm sorry, you're not going to have a strong, functioning, workforce.
Yeah. Yes, we have trust issues here in the UK with our.
I think in most countries.
Yeah. We that was definitely true in our case. Let's turn to some questions now. So we have a question here from Shannon. Let me just get that question up. So this is, and I guess this goes back to something you said earlier about how you plan your day, but the question is in regards to working from home, the working from home situation and the blurred lines, what effective ways can we separate our work lives from our home life, given that they seem to be one and the same? And also, what can we do on an individual level to positively change minds about gender equality?
So I'll take the first one. I think it involves a lot of honest conversations with your spouse, with your family, with your employer, with your teammates, and then collectively agree what is your schedule going to be, and how are you going to separate your work and your home, etc. And if you don't communicate, others will not be able to plan around you or with you. And it's important to have these honest conversations, because there will be times when it will be overwhelming, and there will be times when your work will take priority, and there will be times when your home will take priority. So you have to, and that's fine. This should be part of your life, where children peep in and try to see what's going on, and it's okay. Hi. And I really feel that the more normal it becomes, because they are curious, they want to know what's going on. Yeah. It should be okay for it. And kids are not disruptive unless you put up a resistance, and then they will disrupt for sure. Patik, it's fine. Don't worry.
Man, seriously,
He's not distracting me. So
that's amazing. He might distract me if that football hits me in the face, which is his aim. I want to make it very, very clear. He's not going to rest until he's hit me in the face. So that's oh man, okay, great.
So that's one, right? Because I mean, like, things like this will happen, and it's okay, and we have to learn to manage it.
Please, can you leave now?
I need to wait.
Okay, right.
So
okay. Yeah.
So the honest conversations for work distribution and also to manage deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one is, you can't address gender equality if you don't have conversations again and you don't walk your talk.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's as simple as that. It's not, it should not be forced in a way. It should come naturally to you, right?
Yeah. I guess one of the things that I'm finding about race equality, not gender equality, is how sometimes when you mention it in the workplace, people say that you're politicizing the workplace. But they should never be about politics, right? I mean, gender equality, race equality are not political issues; they're humanitarian issues. But have you found that when you're doing workshops with corporates, that they see this as divisive rather than just a basic human right that we should be trying to make our workplaces gender safe?
Which is why the conversations are important, right? And when we have these, so the way we do our workshops is we try to help them think about the issue and say, okay, why is this happening? Have you even thought about it? So we try to address unconscious bias, help them think through, gender roles, stereotypes, the bombardment of the normalization of these stereotypes through ads and films, and how you could be totally oblivious to it. For example, yesterday there was a high court ruling where the judge granted divorce to a man because the petition was, I want a divorce because my wife refuses to wear a sindoor, the thing.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, like, is that a ground for divorce? But that's how entrenched it is.
Yeah.
So it's about chipping away this unconscious bias, and one should not take offense when called out. In fact, maybe you can have a conversation about it and think about it. So, and this is a moment in time where all over the world they're having these uncomfortable conversations. And if you are not in a position to have these conversations, then maybe you're going to be obsolete in a few years because the world will progress and you will be left behind. So it's up to you to have these conversations and upgrade your own understanding.
That's exactly, I mean, that's just a brilliant way to frame it, and I think that is the way to say that you will become obsolete, that the world will move on and you'll be left behind. I hope that message is getting through. We've got a question about the SafeCity app. So how does it work for people who aren't familiar?
So we have the web app and we have a mobile app on Android and iOS. Right now, the mobile apps are undergoing an upgrade, so they're not available. Right now, we've taken them off the app stores. But the web app is available right now, and you can go to maps.safecity.in and put in where did it happen, what happened, the date and time, and pick a few categories, write a few details about the incident. You don't have to leave your name and email. And with that information, it gets plotted on a map, visualized as hotspots so that we can see location-based patterns and trends. The ability to see stories clustered on a map helps you put perspective to what is causing that incident to take place in that particular location, and can something be done about it? These are anonymous stories, and the fact that they are crowdsourced means that the more stories in one particular location draws your attention to and forces you to understand what is it about that location that makes it the comfort zone of the perpetrator, and can that be fixed? Sometimes it could be infrastructure related, like maybe it's crowded or isolated. It could be lack of lighting. It could be a particular space issue, a spatial dimension to uh, that location. Or it could be that maybe there's a lack of understanding and awareness, and if you were to educate the people around, could that make a difference? And we've tried that. We've done all sorts of things, from engaging police who've changed their beat patrol and increased vigilance, to civic authorities who fix public toilets, which seems to be a cause of concern in many parts. And lighting seems to be a problem. But also, having these conversations and educating the larger community has helped to uh, get a better understanding of, say, things like, okay, we shouldn't stare at women, or we should maintain distance. Now with COVID-19, we know how much distance you have to keep between two people. But imagine in a city where there are millions crowded in spaces and in public transport, it's difficult. But I have seen over the years that it does a lot of this education, which is really focused, could make a difference.
I've got a question, and it's not, and before I come, we've got time for one more question, but I wanted to ask you a question about feminism in India, because something that I found is how many Bollywood actresses, for one, have refused to call themselves feminists. Why do you think that is, and how do we stop it being a dirty word for women and men too, to be able to declare themselves to be feminists? This seems like a long battle.
I just think they don't understand the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand the meaning of the word, and just because it has feminine, it doesn't mean it's female.
Right.
So they don't understand the meaning, and therefore it shows their lack of understanding. And I would encourage them to maybe read up a bit and try to understand. I recently came across some people who call themselves meninists. So I don't know what they are trying. They are men's rights activists who are saying they are meninists, but I think it's stupid. So, I don't think a meninist is an opposite of a feminist. So really,
I think this is like reverse racism, isn't it? This is this idea that
I have no idea, but it just sounded silly, and it takes away from the importance of the issue. So yeah, I mean, people just need to read up a little bit and try and understand what it actually means.
Yes, they do. Okay. A last question for you, Elsa. So you are such an inspiration. It sounds like you are always very busy. I was wondering what motivates you the most each day to work so hard, and what's your advice to other social entrepreneurs to ensure their venture is a success?
So I am motivated when somebody tells me that, they read about what I wrote and it made a difference in their life, or if I said something and it gave them confidence, or they attended one of my organization's workshops and they learned something new. They asked for more reading material. They wanted to do something. They wanted to take action. I think these are stories that help motivate me to do more. And, I feel like I'm making a difference. So do write in, because I am motivated by the feedback. And I also know then what's working and what's not.
Yeah.
And for any social entrepreneur, I would say, be clear about your mission, be clear about your values, and then be bold and fearless and just go as per your plan. Don't get distracted by what others say or what others think, because they will never understand what motivates you.
Fantastic advice. I love that. Thank you so much, Elsa. You can find Elsa all over the internet, but on Instagram at ElsaMarie_DS, Twitter at ElsaMarie D'Silva, and Facebook at Elsa.D'Silva. You can find her TED Talks and other talks on YouTube by searching her name. If this is your first time tuning into our events, welcome to the Social Impact Lab family. You'll find more resources on social impact, careers and opportunities on our website, sutton.ac.uk/SI Lab. If you like this episode, then please show us some love, post a comment or share our next conversation event with your friends or loved ones. Remember, you can watch this video again by coming back to this page and watching our videos, where you can find our previous episodes too. We'll be back on Tuesday the 14th with another special guest, so please do join us then. Until the next time, stay safe and take care of yourselves, and join us in building a world in which we can all thrive. Bye.